Good afternoon. Welcome to our session, Extending Einstein Prediction Builder with Process Flow. Nothing beats presenting during lunchtime, so a big thank you to you for joining us here. I have with me here Sarah Escher. She's a product manager on the Einstein platform team.
Hello.
My name is Ralph Schundelmeyer. I'm also a product manager on the Einstein platform team. And no presentation at Salesforce doesn't start with this slide. So please keep in mind, we might make forward-looking statements, so please make your purchasing decisions based on what features are available today and not what we might be talking about today. So what are we going to cover today? We want to start with a high-level introduction of Einstein Prediction Builder. Then we follow with a demo of Einstein Prediction Builder. And then we move to how can we use the predictions that we create using Einstein Prediction Builder in Process Flow or Process Builder to extend basically business processes to drive processes in Salesforce. And we will also do a demo for that section. OK, Sarah, take it away.
You must hand me the clicker. Hi, everyone. I'm going to give you the quick introduction to Prediction Builder. So before I start, though, I usually want to ask a question, which is, do people know what machine learning is? Because we make all these discussions about, like, we're adding predictions. So I want to just give sort of a baseline. What is actually machine learning? And I think there are different definitions, but the definition that I like to go to is basically machine learning is using the past to predict the future. And what does that mean? Well, it means basically you've got computers, and they computer algorithms, and they go through your historic data, and they look for patterns. And when they find those patterns, they can use those patterns to sort of guess what's going to happen in the future. So it's never going to be like 100% accurate. It's not a crystal ball, but it does find patterns and then make suggestions based on those patterns. OK. So Einstein in general, I'm sure you guys have heard that about Einstein. And one of the things that we've been concentrating on a lot is providing sort of point solutions. An example of this is like Einstein lead scoring. I'm not sure how many of you guys are using Sales Cloud and are using leads that are converting to opportunities. I see a couple nods. It's a very, very common use case. So a lot of our original thrust of Einstein was, let's find those common use cases so that we can create something for everyone, and everyone can benefit from them. And that's a great way to start. However, everyone loves to customize. And I'm sure you guys also like to customize as well. How many of you are using custom objects? All of you? Yeah, exactly. What is it? 80% of records are on custom objects. So even though we have these point solutions, they won't necessarily be applicable to something that you want to do. The way I see it is business needs custom predictions. You have custom objects. You need to do your own custom predictions. And so there are a bunch of different potential use cases that people could have. So for example, in higher education, you may want to predict, is someone likely to graduate from college? Or if you're in healthcare, you're going to predict, I don't know, what could you predict? You could predict what is the likelihood someone's going to take their medicine or something like that. You go, you try one. Oh. Have to put you on the spot.
I mean, a very famous one is propensity to buy.
Yeah, no, that's a great one.
You can do inventory predictions, so when you need to replenish.
Exactly.
Lots of examples.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different things that you can do using, or there are a bunch of different types of predictions that you can come up with. And so that was the purpose of creating Einstein Prediction Builder, to provide a tool for individuals to be able to create their own predictions. And the other thing that we were trying to do with Einstein Prediction Builder, its tagline is point, click, predict, is to try to simplify it as much as possible so that the admins, who are not necessarily data scientists and haven't spent all their time moving data around and all this kind of stuff, can help make these predictions. Because even if they're not data scientists, they know their data, and they know what's important, and they know what they want to predict. OK, so I'm going to show a quick demo. We'll just quickly go through it, and then I will hand it back to Ralph, and he can go through Process Builder stuff. So hold on just a second while I move over. OK, so in this particular demo, I am a bank. OK, I'm not actually a bank, but I work for a bank. And the problem that I'm trying to solve is that I have a lot of customers who have a tendency to leave. Not all of them. Most of my customers are very, very happy, I hope. But there is attrition. People leave after a while. And the question is, how can I tell which ones are going to leave? I have this list of a lot of random people. How do I know which ones are the ones that are happy and which ones are the ones that are unhappy? How can I figure out who is most likely to attrit? So that's the problem that I would like to solve. And so the answer to that now is I would talk to my admin and be like, help me solve this problem. And so the admin would take over and be like, no problem. Prediction Builder will help take care of this. At least we hope. So Prediction Builder is just built in just into the admin pages. Oh, and one thing I should note, which I said on the slide, this is currently in pilot, but you go to the Einstein Prediction Builder and get started. And I'm going to create a prediction. So my prediction in this case is just like, you're going to see what a terrible speller I am, likelihood to attrit. Maybe I'll make you type next time. Terrible typer. OK. So the first screen is select an object that you want to predict. So in this case, we are trying to basically, we have these contacts, and we would like to know whether the contacts are likely to stay or whether they're likely to go. So the object that I'm going to choose is contact. OK, select a field to predict. So now, jumping back to what I was saying about setting up these machine learning, Einstein is smart. We hope it's really smart. But one thing it can't do is it cannot read your mind. You have to give it enough information to know what the problem is that we're trying to solve. So in this case, you can potentially predict like custom fields, or I'm sorry, checkboxes or numerics. In the case of attrition is an interesting problem because how do you define attrition? In order for Einstein to work, we need to use historical data, which means we need to have a set of people that we say, yes, these people have attritted. That's easy, right? They've left the system. It's very easy to tell who those guys are. But we also need a set of, like, these are happy people, right? These are people that we know aren't going to attrit. Because in order for us to look at data and look at examples to predict the future, we need to have both those sets, both the happy people and the unhappy people. So in this particular case, as an admin, I created a formula field. Let me find my formula field here, called attritted. And this formula field basically encapsulates that logic for us. It returns a true if they left, if they attritted. It returns a false if we're like, we know these people are happy and they're good people. And then it returns a null in this particular case, which is like, these are the other guys we don't know about. Tell us if these guys are going to attrit or not. Does that make sense? OK. OK, next thing we do is, this is just an example prediction to tell you what happens. So we're doing field to predict attritted. And the predicted value is true, and a confidence. So if the confidence is super high, it means we think those people are likely to go. If your confidence is super low, it means these people are likely to stay. Oops. Next, choose where to save your prediction. So the Einstein Prediction Builder writes back this confidence score that we saw on the previous stage. So we need a place to actually write that back. And in the pilot version, which is what we're showing right now, we just write back to a numeric custom field. There's nothing special about it. It's just a field. So I've created a field in advance for this. And this field I just called risk of attrition. OK, this is an interesting one. Confirm fields to make a prediction. So basically, these are the fields that you're going to use to base your prediction on. So for example, let's see. What could be important things about how happy or unhappy a person is? Chances are their birth date is probably not necessarily very important, but perhaps how long they've been a customer would be a good thing. Do they have whatever fields are on there? Some fields are going to be useful and some fields are not going to be useful. So one thing to comment is that you can leave most of these checked, and Einstein's going to figure out which ones are important and which ones are unimportant. However, there are still things that you yourself may want to uncheck. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. One has to do with sort of data cleanliness. If you have a field that was used a lot 6 months ago, and you stopped using it as a ghost field, you don't want to use that as one of these fields to base a prediction on, because as we're dealing with new records, those new records won't have those fields filled in, but the model would have been like, oh, that looked really important. So you don't want to set it up like that. So if there are fields that you know are invalid for whatever reason, you should disable them out of the system. Another set of fields that you potentially want to get rid of are things that will potentially add bias to your model. And it depends on what kind of model you're trying to define. But for example, if you're doing like a credit score type thing, you don't want to use ethnicity, you don't want to use gender. Remove those things, and then we won't touch it, and we won't use that in the model. And then the final one that I want to bring up is something that we've been calling hindsight bias, which is you should remove fields that are only filled out when you already know the answer. Does that make sense? An example of that is for an attrition, if you have a field which is sent the "we're sorry you leave" field, that's really not a field that you want to use in your prediction, because we'll look at that and be like, oh, well, if you sent "I'm sorry you left" field, that person might want to leave and think that's really important. So Einstein actually does a lot of work behind the scenes to try to remove those hindsight biases. But if you happen to know about some of them, just click them off and don't use them. But if you've got fields that you're like, I'm not sure if it's important or not, just leave it in, and we'll figure that part out. How are we doing time? OK, I have to move faster. I'm talking too much. OK, quickly. Focus on a particular segment in your data. If you're doing something like this, you may not necessarily want to create this prediction for all your records. This may be in the sense that for my case, which is I'm trying to predict likelihood to attrit, this is going to sound terrible, but if you only have $50 in your account, maybe I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'd want to concentrate on my high-value customers. And some people are like, wait, you should care about everyone. Other people are like, yeah. So you could do something like total assets under management is greater than or equal to, I don't know. That seems like a nice large number. OK, and then jumping back for this, the next screen is which fields or which records should we use as examples? Jumping back to our original thing we talked about, how do we define machine learning? We need to know what the historical data is. So in this particular case, you guys created a formula field that already tells us that. So you can just leave the default value, which is like, yeah, don't worry about it, we're fine. But if you had chosen something like a checkbox, then you might want to give us other information about which ones are the historical data. Does that make sense? Yeah, OK, I see some nods. I'll take that as a yes. Anyways, that is it. We build the prediction, and then we are finished. And what happens now is we take that configuration, we bring it over to the Einstein platform, and it generates a model based on the information that you've given us. And then we start pushing back scores. Approximately every hour, you'll get new scores. So if a record changes, within an hour or so, you'll get a new prediction based on whatever changes happened in that record. Let me show one thing. Oh, never mind. Oh, OK. Thank you. Last thing I want to show real quick. It'll take 30 seconds or less, I claim. My contacts. Is then at this point, you will actually have a number back, at which point you can now sort by this. You can use this in Process Builder, so you can open cases for people who are likely to attrit. So you can tell your agents immediately, hey, concentrate on these people. So it has the potential to really change your business processes and smooth them and streamline them. And with that, I will pass it over to you. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Sarah. So now we have seen how to create a prediction. We simulated how the scores come back into the system. And now we want to talk about how can I trigger business processes in Salesforce based on these prediction scores. And how many of you are familiar with Process Builder? So that's basically the tool that we use. Because Einstein is built within our platform, we can leverage other platform tools like Process Builder. And basically what we've seen here, we have the customer record, we do a prediction, the prediction creates a score, and now we can define business logic in Process Builder to do certain, or to take certain steps, to take certain actions based on the value of the score result. Then we evaluate the rules, and then you can create new records, you can update records, you can create notifications, send emails, so the full power of Process Builder. And in the example here, we used a customer record. We modified a customer record because, for example, I'm an account manager and I notice certain activity. I update the contact record. Now, the Einstein platform is picking up this change of the contact record and identifies that, hey, this contact has changed. I need to recalculate my score. We pass it on to the Einstein platform, we recalculate, and based on that recalculated score, I determine, oh, there's an increased attrition risk. And with this increased attrition risk, I go into the rule evaluation, and we determine in this example that we want to create a task for the account manager to follow up. So switching over to the demo. So I'm looking here at Edward and Sarah. We didn't clean it up.
Too bad. Okay.
Things happen.
Don't show it.
So I'm unfortunately doing the reverse demo here. OK, so we see here the attrition risk is 6%. I'm a bank. I want to monitor how many external bank relationships does my customer actually have, right? So we have one external account here. And the idea is, in this demo, this customer opens a new account with a different bank. So we update the record. And then, of course, as Sarah mentioned, typically we pick up changes every hour in a batch mode, but here for the demo, we kick it up early. And you see already that the contact is marked red. The attrition risk has increased from 6% to 26%. And what we also see is an activity has been created. So how do we do this? We have a flow here in Process Builder where we monitor exactly that. The flow is called churn management, and I just go through it simply for the sake of time. At first, we have to specify what's the object that I want to evaluate, and here we want to monitor the contact object. And we select that we want to do this when a record is created or when a record is edited. And then we have here a business rule and evaluation. In this case, it's called high risk, low value. I basically want to monitor the attrition risk. And I say if the attrition risk is greater than 0.2, and if the projected long-term value of this account is smaller than 500K, then this rule equals to true, and I'm kicking off this action here, which is basically the creation of the task. So that's in very few steps how you can link prediction scores with Process Builder to trigger processes in Salesforce. And as I mentioned earlier, let's just click on this one here. Oh, because it's active. So we have a second rule here where we say, again, this time we want to see who has a large long-term value, again with the attrition risk, and again we kick off the task here, this time with different content. So this is just a very simple example how you can use Einstein predictions to drive processes. You know, it could be updating records, creating records, as I mentioned, it could be sending notifications. So a very easy way to really surface prediction scores and use them to drive processes in the app. So we have about 2.5 minutes left. So are there any questions from you? Yes.
Wait, hold on.
Do we have any microphones? No.
That's okay. Just tell me and then I'll repeat it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I'll try to translate. So you're saying that so you have a bunch of contact records. Are you asking about the formula field that we're trying to predict? So in that particular case, when you're choosing the formula field, first of all, if you're using a checkbox or you're using numeric field, there's nothing really to do. The checkbox is if it's checked, we're just predicting the likelihood that it will be checked. For the formula field, if you're using that method, which is for if you've got some problem that's hard to define and you want to define it very carefully, your yeses and your nos, you just basically need to return value of true for the records that are true, value of true for the records that are going to attrit or whatever your problem is, a value of false for the ones, for the example, the no examples, and then return null for the ones you want to score. And if you have a fourth value of ignore, those are the records where we're like, okay, we shouldn't even be using this either to create the model or to do predictions on. So it has to be of that exact form.
Mm-hmm. Out of those 20 records,
yeah.
20 contacts,
yes.
not enough data for Einstein to process.
Oh, I see. So you're saying if we only have 20 records, what do we do? Yes. Okay, so that's actually a very important point for all of this, which is when you are doing machine learning needs data. And so therefore, if you actually try this with 20 records, you're going to get, oh, sorry, there was a look saying, please go back to the main screen. If you try this with 20 records, you're going to basically get a message back that says, I'm sorry, we can't create a model for you because there's too little data. You actually do need to have sort of a minimum size of data. And we're still determining exactly where that is. The thing with modeling is it honestly depends on the shape of your data. If you don't have many fields, you can do a model on actually not that many rows at all. If you've got 800 fields, you can't do a model on 500 records. It's just not going to be enough information. So it really is dependent on that. But probably if you have like over 1,000 records, we should be able to create something, assuming you don't have super wide data. If you've got super wide data, then you should have more records. Yes, but 20, no, we won't be able to do anything with 20. Yes, sir. Good question. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the question is, can we use multiple objects? And the answer right now is, we're our first release, and when we go GA, is going to be on one object. But two things on that. If there are fields that you want to use from other objects, you can use roll-up summary fields, and you can use formula fields for data that's not in there. And when you're creating your original formula field, you could potentially pull in things from other objects as well. Our goal is to actually start supporting automatically other objects and pull in things from other objects as well. Yes, this works on standard and custom objects. We basically, force.com, we don't care what it is for the most part. There's some standard objects which don't work, but all the common ones work just fine. Yes? Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question is there, so what happens is we train this model, and then we start pushing back predictions once an hour. And then she was asking, is there a log where we can sort of keep track of it? There will be a status which tells you what's going on, and if we think it failed or whatever else, you'll get like warning messages like that. That'll be in the GA versions. On the record itself, no, not right now. But that's a good, I should write this down and keep track of this. That's a good idea. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, repeat that? It should not. It should not get in the way of governor limits. Yeah.
Sarah, we're out of time.
We are done. We are being told to stop talking. I will be around if people have other questions, and I believe so will Ralph. So thank you very much for coming.